Hi everyone, Simon here from High Plane Games. Hope you're all having a great day and welcome to the final episode of Season 1, if not the whole thing, of Uncle Smithy Kind Words, where we play the Kind Words game and read some of people's problems that they've been sending in on their little paper aeroplanes, see what we have to offer. I originally started this series because 2020 was such a difficult year for so many people, and I thought that this would be a really good way to try and kind of tap into maybe a current of people's issues or problems. But 2021 has proved in many ways to actually be probably more difficult for a lot of people that I know personally, and my family in particular. I think we've had a few struggles throughout 2021. So I found this oddly cathartic in a way to avoid my own issues and having to deal with them. But also I think it's just a cumulative effect of just shit. So let's dive in and see what we've got. Okay, I've got my drink ready. Let's dive in. 3 years ago, I was the most motivated I've ever been in my life. I've learnt a new instrument. I was in the best shape I've ever been. Work life made me lose interest in these things. I quit my job 6 months ago. I spent 3 months just lying in bed. I feel lost. Cheers to you, Em. It's interesting. I have quite conflicted opinions on some of this stuff. In general, I think it's great to have a purpose in life. And you have some people who live to work, and you have some people that work to live. And there's no right or wrong way. It's about what kind of clicks with you, I guess. I work in something that I wouldn't necessarily have thought in any point of my life that it would have been something that was interesting for me or something I wanted to get my hands into. But what I had to do to make my work life interesting was to try and reverse engineer what it is that I do so that it makes sense and almost gamify it in a way that makes me interested in work. But I need to, and I'm very guilty of this, I get quite consumed in a piece of work and I want to make sure that it's finished and completed to the best of my ability. And sometimes that involves things that I can control, but a lot of time it involves things that I can't control. So I have to spend a lot of time trying to wrestle with that and kind of going, no, that's enough, step away, step away, step away, so that I can then enjoy all of the things outside of work that make my life mine and worthwhile. And I think it's difficult to try and balance up those things, especially if you've got a job that is quite all consuming. I'd imagine it particularly being difficult for anyone that has to work odd weird shifts, especially if you're in the medical profession or something like that, or if you're in something where it's either a brain drain and you really struggle to kind of keep yourself engaged and focused, or it's just something you absolutely hate doing. I think what I would say about quitting job 6 months ago and then spending 3 months just lying in bed feeling lost, the best piece of advice that I can give for that, having felt incredibly lost numerous times throughout my life, and still do quite often, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's a wake-up call to try and realign yourself. It sounds very wanky, but realign yourself with where you want your goals to be headed, or to remind you of what you like and what you enjoy. So you talk about a new instrument here. Do you want to pick up that instrument and just give it a go and have a little noodle, or try a different thing, or maybe try out listening to music and trying to find your way back in that way into something that can kind of spark your interest and get you invigorated or inspired. As you can tell, I will never be in a good physical shape, but then one of my motivations is to love stuffing my gob. So actually this chubbiness works quite well for me because I like having my face full. But if you enjoy being in shape, then it's about taking that first step to try and get yourself out of that funk. And it's easier said than done. And I appreciate me just sitting there going, you should really give it a go. It does not really help in any way, shape or form. But it's about being open to new possibilities, I would say. So Normally when you feel lost, it's because you're either repeating the same mistakes over and over again and expecting either different results or noticing decreasing returns on what you do. So that's when you feel like it's time to like pivot and try something new. It's just that sometimes you might have to try quite a few things to work out what's the new thing that will spark that interest and get you going again. It may take time, but I wish you all the best. Good luck. Good luck. Okay, so here's what I've put in. I always find that when I'm lost, it's because I've not found something that inspires me, or I need to gamify something mundane in my life to make it interesting. Pick up that instrument again, or try out a playlist to get you inspired. Maybe a new exercise routine or idea. I'm thinking like methodology. Keep looking at different perspectives and ideas, and you might find something that ignites that spark again and makes you feel inspired and wanting to seize that life, not cease that life. Christ, seize. Oh dear. That would be the wrong problem. There we go. Send before you bugger it up. I've only had 2 sips. It's an amaretto and Coke, so that might be why. Thank you, dear. Let's continue on. So, I ended it with my girlfriend of 2 years a few months ago. Now I have to move back in with my parents for financial reasons. All my friends are in relationships and are busy having lives. Life kind of sucks right now, not gonna lie. Well, S, cheers to life being suckish right now. Boo. So, I don't know if that's just me reading into it by the way how it's written, but you chose to end that relationship by how that's read. It's not your girlfriend broke up with you. So I would say that you have made the first step towards being something better or grabbing onto something better. And if that means that you have to take some steps back to then move forward, so be it. Life is quite often a bit like a weird chessboard where you've got to kind of tango yourself around all the places to try and get to where you want. Nothing ever really goes from A to B directly. You end up going through C, D and E on the way to B and end up probably doing a U-turn at Q. So just always remember that as you kind of go through the shitty bit, it's about getting yourself almost back to like this baseline level so that you can then build up, reconnecting with friends, looking maybe at improving your financial situation if that's at all possible, looking at reinvesting into hobbies and you time so that you can then build up a sense of yourself away from being you and your girlfriend if that was a thing that you had. Whenever shit hits the fan, particularly with relationships, I always find, and this is everyone's different, but I know for me, I usually go into hiding for a while. So I'm trying to think, whenever I've broken up out of a relationship, either they've dumped me or I've dumped them, whatever it is, I usually retreat back to the things that I know are like self-soothing comforts. So I usually end up, in no particular order, writing loads of music, proper miserable music as well, watching lots of Julia Child and Bob Ross, because they're like my top tier comforting programs, while stuffing my gob. There'll always be some comfort food, obviously, but then after that, that passes. And then I end up normally channeling back into things that I enjoy. So gaming, music, film, creative writing, composing, all of that kind of stuff. It all kind of comes back full circle because these are the things that are mine, and so long as I have got a body and I am alive and healthy, they don't desert me. And I can't desert them because they're so part of the DNA of what I love and what makes me me. So what I would say with anyone that's going through a shitty situation, take yourself back to those kind of roots where you can reconnect with all the things that you loved either as a child or your passion projects, especially if you've been in like a really committed relationship. Sometimes, say if you've been in a relationship where you're not allowed to be yourself and it's like you're two peas in a pod going around together, sometimes you start to lose your own identity, and that can often trigger the breakup in a way because you're just like, I don't know who I am. And that's why I always say, like, come back to yourself, because I think that's really good. And yeah, life will be shit. And it will be shit for a while, but it will get better. It always does get better. And then perhaps some of those things that keep you interested and excited in life can lead you to new opportunities, meeting new people, and perhaps future girlfriend down the path should you want it to, when you want it to. There's no script to these things. Let's see what happens. Okay. So my reply is, it's always rubbish for a while. Just think of it of resetting back to factory settings. Quite like that. Reconnect with things that make you happy, hobbies, ideas, you time, essentially. Rediscover what it is that makes you you, especially if you're on that gooseberry on the double dates everywhere. I always think, like, everyone's like, oh, it's okay, we'll take you out with us on dates. And you're like, no, stop it. I don't want to be reminded. You can have a life too, because he's mentioned this person up here, girl or boy, I don't know who, that everyone's in relationships and they're living their lives. You have a life too. So it's just that you need to redefine that life. And you get to redefine that life. As you expand out into new things. There we go. Oh my God. Sorry, I'm editing on the fly. You'll have new people to meet, and when it's time, when you're ready, perhaps a new lady in time too. Good luck. I think that's worth saying. I'm not drunk enough for this. Or maybe I'm getting too drunk. I'm not sure. I've not had alcohol properly all year because of long COVID. So this amaretto and Coke is going straight to my chops. Okay, this next one's from T, and I find it really interesting because I have different answers for this depending on what the context is. So she already knows my interest in her, and she said she was interested as well 5 months ago. Quite a while. We aren't dating because of her personal life reasons. Fair enough, whatever they are. We've had a couple of rough interactions due to personal stresses the last few weeks, and I want to talk to her about it. How? So my response to this is entirely dependent on what causes those personal stresses. And the key thing for me at the top is, are you coming at this from a place of friendship or for gain to push forward the relationship? Because 5 months is quite a long time. If someone wasn't ready for you then and their personal life is still chaotic and you're still stressed now, she's not ready for you now. So if you're coming at it to talk to her about it because you want to progress into a relationship or dating or whatever it is, no, back away, and back well away. This person has already made it very clear in their boundaries that they aren't interested in a relationship because of personal reasons, and they've got personal stresses, so therefore it's still not the time. And all you can do is check yourself to make sure that you're one of two things. Either firstly, coming at this from a place of purely friendship, and you need to make that very clear, because now that you've had this discussion 5 months ago that you were in a interested parties for a relationship, every interaction you've ever had since now has this subtext behind it. And she may be feeling pressure because essentially the way how this is written is in her court. So when her personal life is sorted, she might be up for dating. So you'll be busy there going, so how is your personal life situation? More tactfully, of course. So there's this pressure subtext of, oh God, I've now either got to make things worse because I'm not ready to date you, or I don't want to date you and I was letting you down gently, or my personal life is a trash heap, I can't deal with you right now. And that's now added pressure. So when you're coming along to be the stallion to help, you aren't. You're actually more added pressure for her. So you need to kind of rethink that. And if that is the case, then I wouldn't recommend contacting her at all. And I'd actually say that space and time is a good thing for the pair of you. You might want to kind of say, oh, I've got a mountain full of stuff coming up at the moment, so I'm just going to be a bit AWOL, incognito for a bit. Look forward to catching up later. And it might be worth throwing in an apology. I don't know how your rough interactions were recently and how that's all left. But if you can't come at it from a place of friendship and make that crystal clear, don't go near this, because this has the toxic taffy eyes all about it. And a pressure cooker as well. So I've put, it depends on whether you're coming at this from a place of pure friendship or not. She isn't going to date you anytime soon, if ever. Personal stresses, I assume, are related to original reasons, question mark. And every interaction you have now has this pressure cooker subtext of, he wants to date me, what do I say? If you're pushing for dates, I'd say give an apology, but then time and space apart. If you can truly be friendship support only, then contacting her, making it painfully clear you are supporting her as a friend only. Clear communication stops toxicity, because it nips it in the bud so early, and you have no reason for miscommunication. And that doesn't mean that you don't have rows, and that you don't have stresses, and that you don't have arguments. But they're flashpoints that are very easily resolved because it's less passive boiling up as you go along, because you're not allowing things to mount so that there's a tiny straw that breaks the camel's back. As someone who has spent years and years people pleasing, it gets you absolutely fucking nowhere. Thank you, dear. Okay, this next one hits quite close to home, although my situation is by nowhere near as bad as this. So this person is separated from partner in 2 countries because of borders closed in Australia, I'm assuming that would be. Lately it's been harder and harder. My partner's expressing lots of sadness and craving for physical connection, which is totally valid, and so am I. I feel like I've exhausted everything I can do. I'm assuming that means everything I can do in terms of options of getting together. So firstly, you do absolutely have my sympathies. If you're in a long distance or a medium distance relationship, lockdown and COVID and everything in the last 2 years has sucked balls, frankly. I'm in a relationship with someone who is in the UK. I'm in the UK, but we don't live in the same part of the UK. So it requires coordination, time, and effort, mentally, physically, and emotionally, for us to kind of keep a relationship up, especially as we're in quite busy points in our lives. But also then when COVID and lockdowns hit, throughout 2020, we were in lockdowns at different times, which kind of meant that one of us was only ever free at once, which was a pain in the arse. And in 2021, this year, lockdown for me hasn't really been lifted because I need to be on hand to care for elderly, not very well parents. And so for me, I've made a quite conscious decision to continue as if lockdown is still a thing. So I'm not doing big gatherings. I'm not rejoining society, which works quite nicely for me in some ways because I'm not particularly a social gathering guru. But it absolutely is having an effect on our relationship because we've able to not spend very much time together. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, we're strong enough to survive, but you never know. With all of this type of thing that goes on, it's I'd say the big takeaway that we've had as a couple is to make sure that the time that we do have together, we try to make the most of it. And I'm not talking about like when we get together, because the real world's still going on. So we're still having to work, for example, and we're still having to do the mundane stuff. And as much as we'd love the world to stop still, sadly, the bills to keep this shitty flat together still needs to be paid. So, yes, delightful. But what I'm talking about is that kind of remote digital interaction. You have to both be committed and active participants in it for it to work. And what I mean by that is that you can't just be like, hey, how are you? Great, thanks. Bear with me, I'm just going to watch this show. Or bear with me, I'm just doing this, that, and the other. It's about making sure that you've allocated and set time aside for yourselves so that it is just like only the two of you are in a shared digital room, for example. And I appreciate that will not fulfill the physical side of stuff. But if you're able to emotionally and mentally connect, you can sustain things for a decent period of time. Now, I don't know what's going on around borders of Australia, how long that's going to last for. Who knows what the next few months are going to bring. If your relationship is a really long-standing one, I would say that this is kind of like a worried and horrible blip in the road, and it's probably making you understand just how much you miss each other. If it's a much shorter relationship, I think it's valid potentially to reassess whether or not you want to continue on this relationship together, especially if your partner is really, really struggling and it's taking them to an emotional and mental dark place because they feel lonely. Which then in turn beats you up because you're not there for them and you're not able to kind of give them what they need, when ordinarily this wouldn't even be a problem if the world wasn't happening. And that's why I kind of think and go back to this whole making sure that whatever interactions you are able to have, that you're present, active and engaged 100% of the time, because that's the only way how you can give any of this kind of comfort at the moment. And it makes it quite difficult. Trying to include them in your day-to-day stuff, I think, is quite helpful as well. Dropping little messages here and there just to kind of let them know that you're in their thoughts. Including them in like some of the mundane shit for decisions. Takeaway bingo is one of my games. I always bring that up. Let's see what you're ordering me for my takeaway. Weird, stupid stuff like that, just to try and keep things light but engaged and loving and interesting. But ultimately, the test of time will be down to yourselves as to whether it's worth, if your relationship is worth the wait for, and only you two can answer that. And whether or not it's worth the pain that you're going through now at being apart. What I would say, though, is that if this is more around the physical needs than the emotional ones, a quick mucky fuck will ruin the relationship if you aren't on the same page about monogamy or open relationships. So keep your dick in your trousers, basically. That's all I can say. I'm not a fan of cheating. Disgusting. Tell me one thing that made you smile today. My mum coming out of hospital and returning home from her op. Both my parents have been in the wars lately with lots of tests and issues and biopsies of things. So to have them both back at home, albeit recuperating and in recovery and being miserable, I've not been so pleased to see two cantankerous old bastards just being like rah, at each other, like the twits from the Roald Dahl book. Made me smile. Okay, so my mum came home from hospital today after an operation. She dealt with it really well. She did, actually. She's in much better spirits than I thought she was going to be. I brought over some cupcakes and we had a laugh reading through the doctor's report in different voices. There's a sub-story to this. So my mum is 69 and in the UK, I'm assuming this is a standard practice, but when you're of a certain age, when you go in for ops and stuff like that, part of the doctor's note was a dementia test. And she was so proud to tell me that she's not got dementia. And I was like, of course you don't have dementia. That would require you to like sit still for 5 minutes. So this is a tricky one. And there's lots of layers that I want to go into with this. And it might be a bit of a ramble. It's been 2 years since I've seen my dad. He was not a great person, but still, I feel like there was more I could have done to fix our relationship. Now, I don't know how old A is. And so I'm going to kind of cover a gambit of things, and only some of this will apply to A's situation and to anyone's. But the first thing I'd say is that if you're a young person or a young adult, or if you're in your childhood, it is absolutely not your responsibility to be fixing any relationships with any parents whatsoever. That is down to the parent, and they should have fostered an environment that made you feel safe and secure, and that you shouldn't be having the responsibility to fix a relationship or to fix a problem. And some of that will be down to learnt behaviour. And so when you are feeling guilty, that's because perhaps your father or your environment was making you feel guilty because you needed to people please your dad to survive and therefore have an easier life because he wasn't a great person to get along with. I could be reading much more into that than maybe what there is. But in general, when you go through some tumultuous childhoods, and a lot of the things that I've had to deal with in a professional nature around domestic abuse, quite often there's around learning behaviours to survive something. That means that you learn to people please. You learn almost Stockholm syndrome-y sometimes, that you have to please that person so that you have a good day. But then you kind of feel guilty of, well, actually, if I failed that and they were still angry at me anyway, what could I have done differently to make the situation better? But it's not even your fault. And so that's why a lot of people don't actively leave things, because you get wound up in this gaslit circle where your reality is not actually what you perceive it as anymore, because everything around you doesn't mirror that and doesn't tell you that, and all the feedback you get doesn't show that either. And so no wonder if you've been in that kind of situation, you're still sitting there thinking, yeah, he was a bit of a twat, but what could I have done to save that? It's not down to you. There's a good saying in England, I don't know if it's the same elsewhere, where you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And that is totally true up until you become an adult. So if you're now an adult and you're now no longer having this relationship, whether it's instigated by your dad being rubbish or whether it's something that you've chosen to do, it could well be one of the best things that you've done. Because when you become an adult, you can start to choose who's in your life and who's not. So some of those choices may have cause and effect. So if you decide that, you know what, so let me try and give some examples to ground this in reality. So if you've got a gay teen but with hugely homophobic parents, you can choose to live in that environment but then feel like you're the person that's broke the relationship because you did something wrong, and you'll be constantly told that because you're the thing that's wrong to them. So you're just getting that feedback back that perpetuates that evilness. Or as soon as you become an adult that's able to get out and live their own life, you can choose to drop them and move on into a place of happiness and acceptance. But the cause and effect of that is that you'll then need to look at being self-sufficient. You might have to go into a bedsit or a shitty place for a while. You might be staying with other family members or friends and stroking up new friendships there instead, which could lead to better things down the line. But it's active. When you become an adult, you can actively make all of those choices. Whereas if you're having to deal with this in a childhood situation, you aren't allowed to be responsible to make those choices unless you're in a really dire situation and the authorities are involved. So yeah, don't feel like you needed to fix a relationship. It's not down to you. It's down to your father being able to create an environment that means that you don't have to feel like you need to fix anything in the first place. So I hope that kind of makes sense. That felt like a bit of a ramble, but yeah, it's a tricky one. I'd say from a personal perspective. So, and I'll try and keep things anonymous where possible. But so my brother and sister have their father. I have my father. Their father was very absentee and would just turn up at random times here and there and expect, or it felt like from the outside looking in, that he expected them to kind of be like, oh, daddy's here, drop everything and spend the time, when he decides that it's time for him to want to be involved for 5 minutes. And then he'd lose interest and wander off somewhere else. But what was really interesting is that over time, as they became more established with their own families and their own lives, that pandering didn't wash, and as a result I think they felt better about their relationships with their father, because it's no longer lopsided. It's much more about an even keel of giving and take. So if you do want to fix that kind of relationship, you can offer out the olive branch on your own terms and conditions and see whether or not your dad wants to try and do some of that. But be prepared that if he's had a history of being crap beforehand, history often repeats itself. Expect crap in the future. Don't jump to the conclusion on it, but be prepared to whip that olive branch away if they start to repeat past mistakes that maybe caused that initial fracture in your relationship to begin with. Okay, I totally forgot that I was just about to press send, and I forgot that I was going to needed to tell you what I've said. You only need to feel like you need to fix your relationship because your dad maybe created the environment where you felt responsible for things you shouldn't have been. Not sure of your age, but if you're under 20, it's not your responsibility to fix, and that could be a mini gaslight. If you don't see each other due to his poor behaviour and you want to offer an olive branch, do it, but make it clear that the offer gets retracted at the first problem, because you don't want that toxicity in your life. And you have to be so strict on that kind of stuff, because otherwise you're just giving everyone a free pass, and then their word means nothing, and then how can you trust them ever again, and then how can you feel comfortable letting them back into your life? And it's a snowball of shit. Oh no, don't go with that girlfriend. Uncle Smithy says no. Thank you, dear. I tried telling let's try this one. I tried telling a friend I live with about boundaries and respecting my items, but they don't seem to get it at all. Almost immediately after I said about staying off my bed when I asked, they were smack in the middle of it, pushing me off. Talking to them doesn't work. Get a lock and key, N. A lock and key. Stop it. If someone doesn't respect your boundaries, they do not respect you. Especially if it's in your own personal space. So yeah, I'd get a lock and key. I would almost get formal with it after a while. And I'd get shitty. I don't really have a good reply to that. But yeah, lock and key. Lock and key. I somewhat excitedly signed up for Tinder for the first time since I got out of an 8-year relationship. I'm always getting no matches, not even those anonymous likes back from strangers I haven't liked back. We all know those robots. I know this stuff shouldn't matter, but it hurts. Do you know what? It is all about... everyone who I know that's been successful on Tinder largely has played the numbers game and just swiped everyone, just hope for the best. I'd also say it's better to get a couple of proper likes than loads of fake ones. I'd rather have quality over quantity, so don't panic. Someone's out there for you, don't worry. Do you ever feel like you're prioritised in life? It's strange. I do believe that we should focus on ourselves, but isn't there also the consideration of other people? I can't seem to wrap my head around the concept of why we're all inherently selfish in some ways. Well, I'd say we are inherently selfish because we need to be to survive. Humans have some of the longest gestation periods for a baby, and you're inherently selfish and codependent on people when you're born. If you left, I think it's Till Swan that says this, if you left a baby in the floor for a couple of months as a baby, it wouldn't survive, it would die, because it needs its mother or father or a provider of sorts to be able to feed it, look after it, keep it warm, whilst it kind of learns to crawl and then walk and then fend for itself. Even if we weren't in like a big huge society everywhere, we're still in civilization and all of that kind of stuff, you would still fall over and die if you didn't have people around you to deal with it. So you have to be inherently selfish to have that survival mechanism in you to keep going. And the way how I kind of look after this, maybe this is kind of a brand of, oh, it's all about like self-worth and self-respect and self-care. Oh my God. But if you look after yourself, then that means that you're in a better position to be able to look after other people. And so that's kind of in a way in my head. And I know I get like certain triggers where I'm like, Smithy, you're not doing very well. And that's when I start to be like, right, your priority number one, you need to look after yourself, because you're now not being able to be of service to the people that you love around you, to help them out too. So I see no issue with prioritizing yourself. But you need to balance that in a way that means that the prioritization of yourself does not always need to be at the detriment to everyone else around you. There can be you can frame all of this in reasons that actually mean that you help out other people in the world immediately around you that you can control and support and help prosper, I would say. And if you're able to find a sweet spot in that, then you can satisfy both sides of the coin. It doesn't have to be an either or, it can be both. Okay, so I've tried to concise that down. I've always looked at it as we need to be selfish to look after ourselves so that we can help others and be of service to them as best as possible. It doesn't have to be an either or option. You can be selfish for your own needs that support and match other people's needs too. That usually is where some of the best stuff in life can happen, as you're all going in the same direction. Or to be like spiritual, you're all in alignment. You know what I mean. Okay, final question, I think, for the season. Okay, final question, I think, for the season. I'm so proud of all you guys. Being part of this community and seeing all the positivity is heartwarming. When did you discover Kind Words? How has your experience been so far? So I bought this game, I think, either on launch when it had a launch discount, or like the first sale it had afterwards, because I was really early in on this. I've never asked a question on Kind Words, but I love answering other people's because I just find it quite cathartic to do. And it's interesting to kind of set markers in the sand as to what the current feelings, thoughts, worries, interests, and issues various people have in the world. Because sometimes you can kind of only see things from one perspective, and it's interesting to kind of see that different kind of, is the type of thing that I worry about the same type of thing other people worry about, that kind of stuff. I generally get attracted to different questions on here as well, or certain types of questions, sorry. And they're always around finding a spark, getting yourself unstuck, lifting yourself up from the shit. Probably because I've been there myself several times, so I feel like I've got experience that's valid that may be able to offer some insight or support. But also I seem to attract those types of people in real life as well. I'm often kind of plonked at to be the problem solver in a way. So whether that's sitting there doing pro and con charts, or I've got like a whiteboard over there with all of like my own things of stuff that I'm planning to do, going like crazy professor all day, every day. I love to do all of that. And part of that is about finding trends and themes around different topics and ideas and all of that kind of stuff. Because I just find it fascinating to know the inner workings of how things and people tick. So that's why I like Kind Words. It offers an entirely unique experience to enable me to kind of dive into all of that from a different world. Maybe one day I'll pop in a question of my own and see what comes back. We'll see. But yeah, long may this game continue and last. And if you found Uncle Smithy Kind Words interesting, I'd be interested to know if you'd like a season 2, maybe towards the back end of 2022 as well. So thanks for watching. You guys take care. And if you want to help out some people, I strongly recommend the game Kind Words, Lo-Fi Beats to Write to. It's got a big heart. Cheers. Bye.